Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 12th of December. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. The leaders of Korea and the 10 ASEAN countries start their summit talks in Korea's southern port city of Busan. Discussions will center around boosting economic ties. South Korea's unification minister says Seoul is pushing to reunify the two Koreas, but the South does not intend to absorb the North when or if it happens.
Our two countries should therefore...
Plus, responding to a damning Senate report, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, says enhanced interrogation techniques post 9/11 did yield intelligence that saved lives. So it's day two of the Korea-ASEAN Commemorative Summit that is currently taking place in Busan. The leaders have just sat down for their first round of multilateral talks. For more, let's go live to our Hwang Sang-hee, who is down there for us in Busan. Sang-hee, what's the latest?
Mark, President Park and the 10 ASEAN leaders arrived here at the Bexco Convention Center just about an hour ago. President Park greeted each leader one by one, and before sitting down for talks, they took a quick minute for a group photo. Now, today's multilateral summit is divided into two sessions, and the first session is currently underway. Now, here the leaders are expected to discuss ways to boost their bilateral relations, such as further liberalizing the Korea-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. In her opening speech, President Park proposed advancing Korea and ASEAN's strategic partnership that was established in 2010 and sought the bloc's support in resolving North Korea's nuclear issue. Now, in the second session, global issues like climate change and disaster relief measures will be discussed. Mark?
And Sang-hee, what will be on the leaders' agenda following the two sessions?
Well, the leaders will then head over to the Nurimaru, which was the site of the 2005 APEC summit, for a group luncheon. Then at about 3 p.m. Korea time, President Park will hold a joint press conference with the current chair of the ASEAN, Myanmar President Thein Sein, where they will announce a joint statement containing a vision for Korea and ASEAN's strategic partnership. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of dialogue relations between Korea and ASEAN, and they will be looking for ways to take their relationship to a new level. And that will wrap up the two-day summit. Mark?
Well, thank you very much, Sang-hee, for your report there, and we'll be connecting to Sang-hee throughout the day today. Now, on the first day of the Korea-ASEAN Summit in Busan, President Park held back-to-back bilateral meetings with 6 leaders from the region. Most of the talks were focused on promoting economic cooperation. Our Choi Yu-sun reports.
After concluding an FTA with Vietnam, the Korean president secured a positive response from her Indonesian counterpart Thursday when she suggested they resume their FTA negotiations. Such bilateral deals are expected to increase the number of Korean firms that can benefit from free trade with ASEAN. As for investments in the region, the Thai Prime Minister promised to allow a Korean company retain priority when Bangkok selects a bidder for part of its $10 billion river management project. President Park first raised the issue to the Thai leader last month after the new government in Bangkok said it would reconsider giving Korea priority. Winning infrastructure construction bids has become a major deal for Korean firms, with the ASEAN closely trailing the Middle East in terms of market size. On regional security, ASEAN leaders were united in voicing concerns about the threat of Pyongyang's nuclear weapons development to world peace and endorsed President Park's efforts to denuclearize the peninsula by way of inter-Korean trust building and non-political cooperation. South Korea, as an aid recipient turned donor nation, pledged to expand development assistance to Laos and customize Korea's Haemaul Undong, or modernization of rural communities, to meet the needs of the Southeast Asian country. In addition, Seoul vowed to soon assist the Philippines with recovery efforts in the aftermath of a typhoon in the country, which claimed dozens of lives.
Following a marathon of talks, President Park hosted her ASEAN counterparts and first ladies at a banquet that fused tradition and modernity, representing both Korea and ASEAN. Having reaffirmed their will to boost their cooperative ties, the 11 leaders will meet on Friday to discuss a range of regional and global issues. Choi Yusun, Arirang News, Busan.
And staying with the summit, of all the places the Korean wave has reached, it's absolutely red hot in Southeast Asia. But summit organisers have turned the spotlight back the other direction. They are highlighting the rich cultures of ASEAN member countries themselves. Our Connie Kim filed this report from Busan.
Leaders from Korea and ASEAN member nations are not only strengthening economic and diplomatic relations here in Busan, they're also focusing on the cultural ties that bind them. For Korea, that means promoting Hallyu, or the Korean wave. The first places it washed ashore overseas were in ASEAN member countries. It's been a boon for Korea's tourism industry, with the number of tourists from ASEAN member countries on a steady rise over the past 4 years. Last year, the figure came to 1.5 million. On the sidelines of the Korea-ASEAN summit, Korea is returning the favor through the ASEAN Living Culture Festival, where the cultural jewels of Southeast Asia nations are on display.
The statue of the Buddha is very different from Korea's. I only remember seeing these abroad. It's fascinating to see it in Busan.
Participating performers from ASEAN member nations say the festival serves to promote their culture to Korea.
We actually have been invited to perform to this festival, and we are represent Malaysia, and we are doing the show. I hope that all the crowd will be enjoying the performing.
A special art exhibition is also being held at the Busan Museum of Art, and more than 100 pieces of art are on display to give visitors a better understanding of the region's histories and traditions. Korea's cultural ties with ASEAN are only expected to grow closer. And with plans to establish the ASEAN Culture House in 2017, Busan is now hoping to become the symbol city of strong cultural ties with ASEAN member nations. Connie Kim, Arirang News, Busan.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. Arirang News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Now, in the rest of the day's news, and South Korea's unification minister, Ryu Kil-jae, says South Korea's push to unify the two Koreas is not an attempt to absorb the communist regime. Wrapping up his visit to Washington Thursday, the minister told reporters that the South Korean government's position on unification is premised on peaceful unification as specified in the Constitution. He stressed President Park Geun-hye's envisioned unification drive is based on the North and South working and growing together. Earlier this year, the South Korean leader, President Park that is, said unification would be a bonanza for the two Koreas. North Korea has denounced President Park's drive, saying she wants to absorb the North into the South. Now, micro-blogging site and social networking site Twitter has a very strong presence here in Korea, as it does around the world. But Twitter Korea reported its top tweets for 2014 on Thursday, and it says the nation's biggest story by far was April's ferry disaster. The Seoul ferry tragedy was the event that was most tweeted about here in Korea, as you'd expect, with many tweets in the form of thoughts and prayers for the victims and their families. Next on the list was Korean figure skater Kim Yeon-a's final performance in February at the Winter Olympics in Sochi, a final professional performance anyhow. Following were the local elections in June and Pope Francis's trip to Korea in August, which you can see there. Globally, the most tweeted event of the year was the World Cup semi-final match in July between Germany and Brazil. Now, it was once a kind of smoker's paradise, but Korea is fast becoming a very inconvenient place for those wishing to light up. First came higher cigarette prices, and now smokers are going to have fewer places to smoke. Korea's health ministry says smoking will be banned in all restaurants soon, regardless of their size. Smoking is currently banned in establishments that are 100 square meters or larger only. These new rules begin in January, but there will be a short grace period of around 3 months. After that, people found smoking in restaurants of any size face fines of roughly $90. Electronic cigarettes will also be subject to the ban as well. The ministry's move is part of efforts to lower Korea's high smoking rate, which in actual fact is among the highest in the OECD. Cigarette prices are going to increase by about $2 a pack to around $4.50 starting January 1st under new measures. Now, the frantic rush to scoop up shares in JL Industries ahead of its highly anticipated IPO has now come to an end. The pre-order bidding period ended Thursday for private investors looking to hopefully cash in as the Samsung subsidiary closes in on what looks like being a very highly publicized stock market debut next Thursday. Song Ji-son reports.
1 out of 195. Those were basically the odds for picking up one of JL Industries' 5.7 million shares made available to the public. A record high $30 billion were deposited before the subscription period closed on Thursday, as investors seeking profits rushed to make sure they didn't miss out on the chance, with interest rates hovering at record lows. The biggest IPO of 2014 was even more attractive, with its listing price set at just under $50 per share. Many market watchers forecast that figure will easily surpass $100 soon after trading begins on the main bourse next Thursday.
When you invest in and bid for a share seeking profit, you want the share price to jump to double its IPO price. I'm hoping that will happen in this case since Samsung's a big and stable company.
The company has a diverse portfolio, and there is internal demand from Samsung's subsidiaries. These factors have investors bullish about its mid- and long-term profit outlook.
But the biggest beneficiaries will not be the individual investors. Samsung Group Chairman Lee Gun-hee's 3 children acquired a 40% stake in the company for just $8 million in 1996 through a controversial arrangement, which critics say ensured the controlling family maintained a firm grip on the conglomerate. Lee's heirs are also estimated to have evaded billions of dollars in inheritance taxes and stand to gain some $5 billion in cash if JL shares hit $100. Samsung's IPOs and restructuring measures this year are expected to help the chairman's 3 children gain better control over the conglomerate. The transfer of ownership from the Samsung chairman to his children became an urgent issue for the conglomerate this year, especially after Chairman Lee's heart attack in May. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
Now, in an extremely rare move, amid mounting criticism against the CIA for its use of brutal interrogation techniques post 9/11, the CIA director has come out to defend his agency. For a look at what he said in more detail, let's turn to Eunice Kim at the News Centre. So, Eunice, John Brennan recognised that mistakes have been made, but he did stand by the agency's use of these extremely questionable techniques.
Yeah, he certainly did stand by the agency. He didn't label those techniques as torture. He said he'd leave it up to others to call it what they will. And on the criticism that the program had failed to reap any significant new intelligence, contrary to claims earlier by U.S. officials, he said this.
But let me be clear. We have not concluded that it was the use of EITs within that program that allowed us to obtain useful information from detainees subjected to them. The cause and effect relationship between the use of EITs and useful information subsequently provided by the detainee is, in my view, unknowable.
And as you might have guessed, EITs, they refer to enhanced interrogation techniques that, according to the Senate's so-called torture report, had included things like weeks of round-the-clock sleep deprivation and even rectal feedings. Brennan acknowledged that some methods documented in the report were abhorrent, but he also urged perspective. He said, yes, while there were a limited cases of agency officers using unauthorized interrogation techniques, whom he said should have been accountable, or held accountable rather. He said the overwhelming majority of officers carry out their duties faithfully and in accordance to legal and policy guidance. He said that he was reiterating the view that the controversial interrogation program overall was helpful in thwarting attacks, capturing terrorists, and saving lives.
That's right. And the U.S. Justice Department has said now that it will not pursue criminal charges against those CI officials, as they say there's not enough evidence to prosecute. And of course, we're going to keep watching this story very closely. On to our next big story this morning then. And for the first time in nearly 11 weeks, around 3 months, the streets of the heart of Hong Kong are open to traffic. This after police made good on their promise to clear out the main protest site.
Right. It may have been a tense day, but thankfully not a violent one, unlike what we had seen in Mong Kok 2 weeks ago, where you'll remember police action had triggered several nights of violent clashes. It seems like many of the pro-democracy protesters were already resigned to the fact that, at least for now, this chapter of sit-ins would be behind them. You're seeing their roads back open to traffic. They were by Thursday evening in Admiralty. Some 7,000 officers were deployed on Thursday to remove barricades and clear out that main protest site that had been so symbolic of the named umbrella movement. Now, there was peaceful resistance, though, as police said it arrested 209 people who stood their ground until the end. They were detained for obstructing police officers and unlawful assembly. Demonstrators also vowed to continue their protests through other forms of civil disobedience, saying that this is just the beginning, recognizing that it would be a long road ahead to win their demand for free elections in the territory's leadership polls.
Yes, and they have said that they will be back, as that sign said in the video there. Now, while this encampment was the last large protest site remaining, we understand there is still one more left in Hong Kong. There is a small one in the shopping district of Causeway Bay, and Hong Kong police did say they would take that one down at, quote, an appropriate time. Okay, well, thank you very much, Eunice, and we'll see you back at noon Korea time.
See you then.
Now, scientists are poring over the data from the Rosetta spacecraft's landing on a speeding comet out in space about a month ago, and there's already a hot debate going on about the origin of water on Earth, where it came from. Guan Sua explains the initial findings.
Where did the water on our planet Earth come from? That is one of the questions the Rosetta mission is trying to answer. After the European spacecraft's probe made a historic touchdown on Comet 67P last month, now it's bringing us its first discoveries. One of it is the detection of water on the comet. That's no surprise. But a closer look at the results show that the water is very different from that on Earth. That's what's making scientists scratch their heads. Because so far they thought that comets that smashed into the Earth billions of years ago brought a bunch of water to the planet. But Rosetta's chemical analysis shows Comet 67P's water has 3 times more deuterium, a form of hydrogen, than that of water on Earth. That, according to scientists, rules out that comets are the source of Earth's water. They say this makes it more likely that water came from asteroid collisions around 3.8 billion years ago, as asteroids' hydrogen is more similar in terms of their composition. But some say it's too early to eliminate the chances that comets dump the water into the Earth, saying the deuterium to hydrogen ratio varies by comet.
What we can conclude from these results is that water can develop from various different sources, either close to or far away from the sun.
The principal investigator of Rosina, an instrument of the spacecraft, says the comet's high amount of deuterium means the water was formed at very low temperatures, meaning although it doesn't look like it's the water we have on Earth, it's a real treasure chest to explore very early times of our solar system. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the contract negotiation between the San Diego Padres and Kim Kwang-hyun, as things remained rather quiet even after the 7 a.m. deadline. However, according to several sources, Kim Kwang-hyun and the San Diego Padres were not able to reach a deal. Despite money not being an issue for Kim Kwang-hyun, there were other disagreements in the contract negotiation, as the SK Wyverns will now return the $2 million posting fee back to the San Diego Padres. Meanwhile, Kim Kwang-hyun will be eligible to be posted once again next year. And now shifting over to golf this time, where the Korea Golf Writers Club chose their Player of the Year winners. And this year, the honors went to No Seung-yeol, Kim Seung-hyuk, and Kim Hyo-ju. Now, first off, for No Seung-yeol, the 23-year-old won his first PGA Tour title back in April during the Zurich Classic, also becoming the youngest Korean golfer to win a PGA Tour title. As for Kim Seung-hyuk, it took him 9 long years, but he finally had a breakout season, earning the most prize money in the KPGA, and was also named this year's KPGA Player of the Year. Meanwhile, Kim Hyo-ju had one of the best seasons anyone in the KLPGA has ever had, winning 5 titles, including 3 majors, and was honored with 4 awards during the KLPGA Awards ceremony earlier this week. Now, meanwhile, moving over to artistic gymnastics, where Yang Ak-sun hopes to bounce back from his injuries and finish off the year with a gold medal during the Toyota International Gymnastics Cup this weekend. Now, the London gold medalist, who has been held back with injuries this year, had to settle with a silver during the Incheon Asian Games and a 7th-place finish at the World Championships. But in a recent interview, Yang Ak-sun stated he's feeling a lot better and will leave the past behind and finish the year on a high note, as the Toyota International Gymnastics Cup will kick off on Saturday. And now finishing things off, some interesting news on Thursday, as the Korea Football Association and SM Entertainment signed a memorandum of understanding. A win-win signing for both sides, as the KFA plans to have some of the top K-pop stars perform during A-matches, while SM Entertainment plans to get into sports marketing. Both the KFA and SM Entertainment were excited to sign the MOU, as they hope to combine football and entertainment to bring more excitement throughout the world. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, it's a cold Friday morning. Temperatures have dropped to -6 here in the capital, but the winds are adding a chill to the air, dropping the sensory temperatures a lot colder. And it will also be a snowy day as well. Snow clouds are coming in from the west, dropping snowfall to some regions in the west, and it will gradually spread to other parts of the peninsula. Some regions in the west could see up to 15 centimeters, while Seoul will only see a a light flurries, less than 1 centimeters of snowfall sometime this afternoon. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the afternoon temperature in Seoul will hike up to 1, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 5 and 4, and Busan will top out at 6 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will be getting up to 7, while Daejeon and Dokdo sees highs of 1 and 4 respectively. But strong gusty winds will continue to sweeping in the whole peninsula, bringing down the sensory temperatures a lot colder than these numbers. And it looks like icy cold weather will persist through the weekend, so be sure to stay bundled. That's all for me at this hour. Back to you, Mark, in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jion, for the weather there. And that's all we have for now. There are plenty more stories online, and it's also worth checking out our smartphone app for all the latest news and also all our other programs. We'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.